The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, slid between a utility bill and a coupon mailer, and Clara recognized her mother's handwriting before she even slid it open. Margaret Bennett wrote in that precise, slightly slanted cursive she'd used for 40 years of school newsletters and church potluck sign-up sheets. Clara turned the envelope over in her hands. The return address was her parents' house in Ballantyne, the same house where she'd grown up, where Danny had grown up, where every Sunday dinner for the past 7 months had felt like performing in a play no one had bothered to give her the script for. She opened it at her desk, during the 10 minutes between back-to-back meetings. The cardstock was thick, cream-colored, printed with tiny pink elephants. Danielle Gallagher baby shower. Saturday, October 14th, 2 o'clock. Margaret's house. RSVP by the 7th. At the bottom, in Margaret's handwriting, Clara, please wear something nice, and try not to look like that. Clara almost laughed. She set the invitation down beside her keyboard and stared at the cursor blinking in an empty email draft. 7 months. It had been 7 months since she'd found the messages. She'd been looking for a recipe. Marcus had left his iPad on the kitchen counter, and she'd wanted to forward herself that lemon pasta thing he'd said. The messages app was open. She hadn't meant to, but there it was. A thread with a contact name she didn't recognize, a photo of a woman's bare shoulder, a timestamp from a night Marcus had told her he was working. Then more, 5 months of more, hotel receipts in the photos, coordinates pinned to matches, and the woman in the photos. Clara would know that jawline. She'd grown up sharing a bath. Danny, Clara's hands had gone. She remembered the sound of the kitchen faucet, the dog barking at something, the way her own breathing sounded too loud in her. She'd sat at the kitchen island for an hour, the iPad face down granite, before Marcus. She didn't confront him for days. And when she did, when she laid the tablet on the table between them and said, "Tell me this isn't what I think it is," Marcus had looked at her with face, the one he used when hot, the one that was equal parts apology and elation, and said, "It was a mistake. It's over. Please don't do it." That was the... Her parents had shown up at the house that same night. Margaret in her cardigan, Robert in his slippers like they'd been waiting by the phone. Margaret had sat on the couch and folded her and said, "We've known, and you have to understand, Clara is pregnant. She's Todd. This baby needs a family. Blow this up. You're not just hurting us and Danny. You're hurting..." Robert had started his shoes. "Your mother's right," he'd said. "For once, can you just think of some of yourself?" That was 7 months ago. Since then, Clara had eaten Sunday dinner at that house. She'd smiled at Todd when he talked about colors. She'd asked Danny if baby was kicking. She'd slept in the same bed as Marcus, though they hadn't touched each other since the night he found the iPad. She'd done all of it because she didn't know what else to do, because every time she thought about leaving, Margaret called and needs you. Because some part of her still believed she was good enough, patient enough, quiet enough, so choose her. Her phone buzzed, Margaret's name on the screen. Clara let it ring, then picked up. "Did you get the invitation?" Didn't bother with hello. "I got it." "Good. I need you to bring the fruit platter, the one from Whole Foods, not the grocery store." His voice dropped, the way it always did when she was about to say something that sounded like concern, threat. "This happy day for your sister. I don't want any scenes. I wouldn't dream," Clara said. She hung up. She looked at the invitation again, at the pink elephants, at her at the bottom. Not to look like that. Clara opened her on her laptop. She named it Baby Shower. Then she sat back in her chair and listened to the hum of the office, phones ringing down the hall, the copy machine grinding expense report. Going to that shower. And she was going to bring a gift. Clara started that night. Marcus was in the living room watching a game, a half-empty beer on the coffee table. She sat at the dining table with her laptop and pulled up their joint checking account. She'd always handled the bills, which meant she had full access to every transaction going back years. She scrolled to the month she'd been in Raleigh, January through March of the previous year. There were the usual things: groceries, gas, the mortgage. Then, a charge at the Hilton Garden Inn in Pineville, 2 nights in a row. Another at a hotel near the airport, a restaurant in South End, the kind of place Marcus would never have taken her, because it was too fancy for a Tuesday. She cross-referenced the dates with Marcus's work calendar. Those weren't work nights. He'd told her he was at the office. She kept scrolling. February, March, April. The charges didn't stop when she came home. A hotel in May, a restaurant in June. Her hand stilled on the keyboard. Marcus had said it was over. He'd looked her in the eye and said it was a mistake. It was over. Please don't do anything rash. But the receipts told a different story. 5 months. At least 5 months of hotels and dinners and whatever else he'd paid for in cash. She exported everything to a PDF and saved it to the baby shower folder. Then she logged into Marcus's iCloud. She'd had the password since they got married, and scrolled through his photo. Most of it was boring. Golf courses, client dinners, a blurry photo of a Then she found a series from a weekend in March. Marcus and Danny at a bar, his hand on her knee. Another in a hotel room, the lamp casting that warm yellow light. Neither of them looking at the camera. Clara downloaded both without flinching. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried about any of this in months. There was something about seeing it laid out in dates and dollar amounts that made the anger easier to. On Thursday, Marcus came home with flowers. The kind that cost $40 at the grocery store. He set them on the counter and kissed the top head, a gesture so performative she almost thought we could go out this weekend. Just that new place on Providence. Sounds nice, Claire said, arranging the peonies in a vase while thinking about the hotel receipts in her. Sunday dinner was at her parents' house. Margaret had set the table with the good china, which meant she was building up to. Todd was grilling burgers on the back, and Danny sat on the couch with her feet up, 7 months pregnant and glowing in a way that made Clara's. Everything's set for the 15th, Margaret said, passing the mashed potatoes. Caterer at 12, Linda from the church is doing. Clara, I need you here by 11. Sure. And King, you could say a few words. A toast, about family, about how we all come together for the people. Clara felt Marcus's knee shift beside her. Her mother. A toast. Something nice. Short. Margaret smiled, but her harp. It would mean a lot to Danny. Looked up. Yeah, Clara. Cool. Clara took a bite of burger and bully. I'd be happy to. Relaxed. Margaret poured tea. Todd asked football. Then Clara casually. Hey, Marcus. Remember that trip you took to Pine last spring? The one where you said you were at a sales conference? Robert's fork paused to his mouth. Margaret's didn't move, but something behind her held. Danny's hand went to her stomach. A reflex. Marcus set his glass down too hard. What trip? Clara said. I must be with something. Other. Margaret smiled back. Neither the other. In the kitchen afterward, Margaret's voice was running water. Don't do that. Do what? Exactly what? Margaret rinsed and handed it over. I told you. This is a happy time. Can't be happy. Clara dried nothing. That night, she sat at the dining table and opened the baby shower folder. She added the photos. She did the receipt spreadsheet. She stared at the growing list of files and thought about months of hotels. About her parents sitting in this while she was in Raleigh. Of Margaret saying, we've known. They'd known the whole time. Every Sunday dinner, every phone call, every time the family needs you, they'd known. And they'd chosen Danny. He's chosen Danny. Clara closed the laptop. She stood in the dark kitchen and listened to ring down the hall. Somewhere outside a dog barked. She ate the toast her mother wanted. About family, about how we all care for the people we love. She was going to give that toast, but not the one Margaret was expecting. Clara called Priya on Monday morning, sitting in her car in the Whole Foods parking lot with the engine running. She hadn't told anyone, not in 7 months. She'd carried it like a stone in her chest, and somewhere along the way she'd convinced herself that speaking it aloud would make it more real than it already was. Priya picked up on the second ring. Hey, you okay? Clara told her. Everything. The iPad. The messages. The photos. Danny. The parents. The Sunday dinners. She talked for 20 minutes and Priya didn't interrupt once. When Clara finally stopped, Priya said, Clara, I'm going to say this as gently as I can. Your family is up. Clara laughed. It came out wet and surprised. And then she was crying. Really crying. For the first time in 7 months. And Priya let her. Okay, Priya said when Clara's breathing steady. What do you want to do? I want to burn it down, Clara said. The whole thing. The lie. I want to walk into that baby shower and make every single one of them feel what I've been feeling. Then we do, Priya said. But we do it smart, not reckless. That afternoon, Clara called a divorcer, Karen Wild, whose name she'd gotten from a co. The consultation was $300, and Clara wrote the check without hesitation. Karen's office was in a strip mall off Park Road, between a nail salon and a dentist. She was in her 50s, silver hair black, and she listened the way good lawyers, taking notes, asking the right questions, not reacting. Receipts from a joint account or from iCloud photos, if you had authorized access, are generally admissible. But I need to be clear. What you're doing? A public reveal at a... That's not a legal strategy. That's emotional, and I can't advise... No. That said, Karen continued, taking off... I've seen a lot of women in your position. The ones who do best stop asking permission. So if you're going this, she tapped colder. Make sure it's airtight, and make sure you're ready for what. Clara left with a retainer agreement in her bag. She felt lighter than she had months. That weekend she went to Nichols. She bought a scrapbook, the nice kind with a leather cover and thick archival pages. She bought photo corners and decorative tape and metallic pens. She stood in the aisle for 10 minutes holding a package of baby stickers, little bottles and rattles and prints. And this book were a baby. She worked on it at the dining table after Mark fell asleep. The lamp turned low, the house quiet except for the hum of. She printed the photos in color and mounted them cardstock. She typed up the rimline, date, location, amount, cross-referenced with Marcus's cloutouts, and taped it beside. She designed each page like a story, because it was what it was, a story about a family that had decided she was. On Tuesday night, Marcus sat down across from her and said, I've been thinking. Clara. About what? Us, this. He gestured between them. Think we should try. For a baby. I bring us closer. Stared at him. It was serious. She could see his face. The same calculation he'd worn that at him. He'd decided that a child would tie her to him, that a pregnancy would make the shower and the affair and everything else disappear into the noise of a new baby. He was using the child as a bandage. Maybe, Clara said. She picked up her fork. Let me think about it. He smiled, relieved, and reached across her hand. She let him. After dinner, the scrapbook. She added the last page, a blank sheet for now. She would write the letter. She ran her the leather cover. The book was almost done. She just needed to the letter would say. It happened on a Saturday. Clara had gone to Target for a birthday card, and on her way back decided to stop by Danny's place. Danny had mentioned needing help with the baby registry. She didn't text first. That was the mistake. Danny's townhouse was in a new development off Johnston Road, rows of identical beige buildings. Clara pulled into the driveway and saw Marcus's truck parked out front, the tailgate open, a flat-pack IKEA box on the lawn. She sat in her car for a full minute. She told herself it was nothing. Marcus had offered to help Todd assemble the crib. Todd was probably inside. This was normal. This was family. She got out and walked to the door. It was unlocked. Danny always left it unlocked, and Clara let herself in. The TV was on. She could hear voices from the nursery down the hall. Marcus's laugh. Danny's laugh. Then Marcus said, Hold this side. No, your other hand. Clara stood in the hallway and listened. There was no Todd. Just Marcus and Danny in the nursery building a crib together. Her husband and her sister. In the room where Danny's baby would sleep. A baby that might be his, she didn't win. She turned around, walked back to her car, and drove to the Starbucks on the. She sat in the parking lot with her hands shaking on the wheel and texted, We need to. Can you meet me? Danny agreed to meet at a Panera near the mall an hour. She showed up in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, looking. Clara didn't bother with Sook. I saw him at your house today, building the crib. Where Todd? Danny's face fell. Todd work. Marcus just stopped by to help. He was sitting by. It wasn't, what? Clara's voice was quieter. Was another affair? Because you two seemed prettier. It's not that anymore, Danny said. Tear in her eyes. It's over. He's being nice. He feels guilty. We feel guilty. Guilty. Clara repeated the word like it tasted bad. Guilty enough to let him build your baby's crib, but not guilty enough to tell him the truth. He flinched. Don't say that. Doesn't need to know. The baby is coming, and I need everything to be normal. Can't you let me have this? Clara stood up, her chair scraping the tile. You had my husband. You had our parents' protection. And now you want me to let you have a perfect little family built on a lie? She left Danny crying out. By that evening, he was on the phone. Clara didn't need found out. What is wrong with you? Margaret's voice white, controlled, the way it furious. He called me hysterical. She's contractions, Clara. Doctor said it's stress. Do you want that baby to come early? Do you want that on your conscience? I didn't. Don't you dare. Margaret's voice cracked. Heart condition, you know that. I can't take this. We had an understanding. Reasonable. Said nothing. Maybe, Margaret said, I'm cold now. Maybe it's better if you don't come to the shower. Just for Danny's sake. We can do a separate visit later. Things have calmed down. Clara gripped the phone, uninviting me. I mean, it might be for the best. Margaret paused. Think about it. For the family. The line went dead. Clara stood in her kitchen, the phone still in her hand, and stared at the dining table. The leather cover. The pages she'd spent nights arranging. The blank final page. She'd made a mistake. She'd let her temper get the better of her. It was closing the door. If she couldn't get into the shower, the book was useless. The evidence was useless. All of it was for nothing. She needed to fix this. And she needed to do it before Margaret made the uninvitation permanent. Clara called Margaret back the next morning. She practiced what she would say in the shower, her voice flat, her face expressionless in the mirror. She needed to sound defeated. She needed to sound like the daughter Margaret had always known, the one who folded. "Mom," she said, when Margaret picked up, her voice thick, like she'd been crying. "I'm sorry about yesterday. I didn't mean, I've just been under so much stress, and I took it out on Danny. I know she didn't mean anything by it. Marcus helping with the crib, I mean. It's fine. It's all fine." There was a pause. Clara could almost hear Margaret calculating. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. And I want to be at the shower. I want to give that toast. I want things to be good between us. For the baby." Another pause. Then Margaret's voice softened, the way it did when she thought she'd won. "Of course you can come, sweet. I knew you'd come around. Family is family after." Clara hung up and went to make coffee. Her hands were... She'd played the part perfectly. That afternoon she went through her old email archive. She was looking for something specific. A thread from 9 months ago, around the time Margaret had shown up at her house with Robert and said, "We know, we..." She wanted to see what knowing had looked like in real time. She found it. A forwarded email in her sent folder from Margaret to Clara, dated 9 months ago. The subject line was just FWD, need. Clara had deleted the original at the time, too overwhelmed. But the forward was still in her sentence. She'd forwarded it to herself with a note she couldn't remember. The original was from Margaret to... Sent 10 months ago. "Marcus, I know about you, Danielle. Robert and I need to sit down with you both and figure out how to handle this. She's pregnant, and if this gets out, it will destroy everything. We need a plan. Call me." Clara read it 3 times. 10 months ago. Margaret had known months ago, before Clara had found the iPad, before the Sunday dinners. Margaret had found out, and her first instinct hadn't been to her. It had been to call Marcus. To make a plan, she kept digging. There was another email, 2 weeks later, also from Margaret to Marcus. "Danny. She agrees the best thing is for her and Todd at the wedding. If they're married before it's showing, no one will question the timing. You need to make sure Clara doesn't find out. Keep her distracted. Work trips, gifts, whatever it takes. We hold this together until baby is born, and then it's just a family secret. Nobody gets hurt. Nobody gets hurt." Clara sat back in her chair, room tilted. About Todd. Good Eddie Todd, who talked about nursery paint colors and grilled burgers on Sundays, and had no idea that his marriage, his baby, his entire future had been arranged like a real estate deal by his mother-in-law. About the quick wedding, the courthouse ceremony 8 months ago that Mark had insisted was romantic, so intimate, when really it had been against a calendar. About the baby. If Danny had gotten pregnant in the window when she was still seeing Marcus, and that's proved she was, then the baby all. Margaret knew. Margaret had always known. And she'd built a lie around it. Did both emails. She carried them to the dining scrapbook. She added them to the middle, between the receipt line and the photos, and she rearranged the pages. Story built properly. The affair, the pregnancy, the mother who found out and chose to bury it, the rushed marriage. They didn't know. This wasn't about infidelity anymore. It was about a conspiracy. And the scrapbook wasn't just evidence. It was an indictment. She picked up the metallic pen and turned the final blank page. For the first time, she knew what the letter would say. Marcus found out on a Wednesday. Clara had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered, and Karen Whitfield's office called to confirm the signing appointment. The caller ID showed Whitfield and Associates, Family Law, and Marcus saw it. She came out with her hair wrapped in a towel to find him standing at the counter, holding her phone, his face the color of concrete. "You're seeing a lawyer." Clara didn't deny it. "Yes. When were you going to tell me you were planning to divorce me behind my back?" "I wasn't planning anything behind your back." Clara took the phone. "I was protecting myself." "Protecting yourself." Marcus laughed, sharp and ugly. "For me? I brought you flowers. I tried to have a baby with you. And you're meeting with divorce lawyers? You slept with my sister, Marcus, for 5 months. You lied about it. You let your mother-in-law orchestrate a cover-up. And now you're upset because I'm talking to a lawyer?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Let me tell you something. If you file, I will fight you. This house? My name is on the mortgage. My salary pays most of the bills. You think a court gives you everything? I will make this so expensive and so ugly you'll wish you'd never heard the word divorce." He was trying to scare her. For a second it worked. The old fear. The fear of not being enough, of being alone. Then it Do what you have to do, she said. And she walked out. By Thursday, she showed up at Clara's office unasked, leaning against her car in the park. Your father and I wanted to... Clara went. She didn't. Maybe because some part of her still showed up when her... Robert was in the... He did her. Margaret sat in her armchair and folded... We've heard of... Have. Robert spoke for the time. Spoke. Not the mumbled agreement he usually offered. His voice tired. If you do this, if you air all of the blick, you're not just hurting Mark Danny. You're hurting us. Your mother. Me, Todd, that baby. You'll destroy... This family was destroyed the day you chose me over me, Clara said. Robert flinched. Margaret tightened. That's not fair, and you know, isn't it? Clara stood. You knew. Both of you. You knew what Marcus did, what Danny did, and your solution was to marry her off to Todd and make me pretending. And now you're telling me I'm the one destroying the family? She left with goodbye. That night, Todd's name on the screen. She stared at before answering. Clara? Todd sounded worried. To say this. Is there something going on? With Danny? With Marcus? Everyone's been acting so weird, Margaret keeps calling and crying. No. Clara closed her eyes. She could tell him. Right now, just the two of them, no audience. But that wasn't the point. All of them know. Together. In the same room. To look away. Everything fine, Todd, she said. Just pre-baby stress. You know how Dan... Yeah. Todd didn't sound convinced. Yeah, probably. Thanks, Clara. In the dark. She thought about this book on the dining table. Letter she'd started. Accusatory. A list done to her. She got up, walked to the and tore it up. Then she took a fresh sheet of paper and the metallic pen. She started over. This time, it wasn't an accusation. It was a goodbye. Clara spent the next 5 days being the wife Marcus wanted. She made dinner. She asked about his day. She laughed at his jokes. When he reached for her hand across the table, she let him hold it. On Monday evening, she said, we should go pick out a gift for Danny. Together. Show a united front. Marcus looked at her like he couldn't believe his luck. Really? Really? She smiled. I've been thinking about what you said. About us. Maybe you're right. Maybe we should try. It was the easiest performance of her life. She'd been performing for 7 months. This was just a different script. Marcus ate it up. He stopped checking his phone every 5 minutes. He even told Margaret that Clara was coming around, and Margaret called to say how proud she was. Clara used the piece to finish the book. She'd bought a leather cover online, the kind with a magnetic closure, and had a woman on Etsy embroider for the baby with love. Aunt Clara on the front in soft pink thread. The pages were thick and cream-colored. The photos mounted with archival the timeline typed in a clean serif font. From the outside, it looked like something a thoughtful aunt had spent weeks making. A labor of love. She added the final letter, the goodbye letter, to the last page, sealed it with a decorative sticker, and closed the cover. The book it weighed maybe 2 pounds. It felt like holding a... On Tuesday, she met Karen and signed the... Karen went through the evidence one more time. Joint account statements. Fine. iCloud photos with shared password. Fine. The emails, if they were forwarded to your account. None of this gets usable. Karen back. But I need to again. Are you sure about the shower? Once you do this, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. Then I'll have the divorce papers ready to file the day after, just in case he makes good on it. Clara had already rented a short-term, a 1-bedroom near South Park, furnished. She'd picked up the keys, packed 2 cases, hidden them in the back of it, and moved her important documents to a safety deposit box at a... Priya called. I RSVP'd to your mom, said I was your +1. She didn't even ask who I was, just said the more the merrier. You don't have to do this. Shut up. I'm doing it. And I'm bringing Xanax. For not you. Clara laughed. It felt good to laugh with someone who... The night before the shower, Marcus was packed. Got a call, he said, not looking at her. Emergency client in Atlanta. I have to fly out tomorrow morning. Shower. His heart skipped. Tomorrow? Shower's tomorrow. I know. I'm sorry. Big account. Can't say no. He zipped the suitcase. Tell Danny I'm sorry. And tell I'll make it up. Clara stared at him. She didn't have the emergency. He thought he was running, too ashamed to sit through a baby shower for a chiz. But it didn't matter. His ass made things simpler. No husband beside her, no Marcus grabbing the book, no before she was ready. That's too bad, she said. Book. He kissed her forehead, a real kiss, for the first time in months. Clara waited until his of the driveway. Then she pulled the 2 suitcases from the closet of her car. She went back inside, picked up the scrapbook, and wrapped it in pink ribbon. Carried it out to the trunk cases. She sat in the driver's seat for engine off. Gets outside. Tomorrow she went into her parents' house, smile at her mother, hug her, and open the book. She drove to the apartment. She wouldn't go back to the house on Providence Road again. Clara woke up at 7 in the apartment, the unfamiliar ceiling greeting her with a faint water stain in the corner. She'd slept 4 hours, maybe 5. The kind of sleep you get when your body is exhausted but your brain won't stop running. She made coffee in the tiny kitchen. The apartment came with a Keurig and generic pods, and stood by the window watching the neighborhood wake up. A man walked a golden retriever. A school bus idled at the corner. Somewhere a lawnmower started. Normal life. Other people's normal life. Priya showed up at 9 with bagels and a change of clothes. "You look like hell," Priya said, setting the bagels down. "Thanks. I mean it in the most loving way." Priya poured coffee. "You sure about this? We can still not do this. Drive to the mountains, eat bad diner food, pretend none of this exists. I've done it before. Surprisingly effective." Clara shook her head. "I can't. If I don't do this today, I never. And then I'll spend the rest of my life at Sunday dinners, smile, while my sister raises my husband's baby, and my mother tells me what a good sport I am." Priya studied her. "Okay, then we do this, but you stick by me. If it gets crazy, you grab my hand and we walk out. No heroic, deal?" Clara changed into the dress she brought, a simple navy blue, length, the kind Margaret would have. Minimal makeup, hair pulled back. She looked at herself in the bathroom. She looked like the aura, the one who showed up and smiled and didn't. Good. That would. They arrived at her parents' house at 11, the caterer was setting up trays and Linda from the church was arranging pink balloons. Margaret was everywhere at once, adjusting cloth, barking an order, fixing a centerpiece that didn't. "Clara, Margaret, I need you to set up the gift table in the room, and make sure the sign-in sheet is by the front door. Danny's in the nursery if you want." Clara went to the nursery. Danny was sitting in the rocking chair, holding a stuffed rabbit. The room was pink and gray. The crib Marcus had helped build pushed against. "Hey," said. "Hey, you okay?" Danny nodded, but her hands were twisting Rabbit's ear, nervous. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you hate me?" The question came out small, almost childlike. "I know you should, but do you?" Clara leaned over frame. Thought about lying, saying no, of course not, Hamily. But the lie, "I want to be you," Clara said, "when we were kids. You were the one Mom bragged about, the one who away with everything. I used to practice being more like you, softer, funnier, easier to love. I thought if I could be like you, too." Danny's eyes filled with tears. "Clara." And voice was steady. "And Mom helped you cover it up. And I realized I never wanted to be you. I just wanted to be chosen. And I never was." Didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked back to the dining room. She set the sheet by the front door, arranged the pens. The scrapbook was in the trunk, tissue. She picked it up. It was light. So light for something that had been on her for 7 months. She carried it inside and set it on the gift table, front and center. The first guest at 1:45. The party was, by all appearances, perfect. Margaret had outdone herself. Pink roses on every table. A caterer passing mini quiches and fruit skewers. Linda from the church had organized a diaper racing game that had everyone laughing. Danny sat in the wicker chair of honor, glowing in a yellow maternity dress, opening gifts one by one. Todd stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder, beaming. Clara sat in the back, beside Priya, and watched. She ate nothing. She drank 1 glass of water and held it in her lap for an hour. She watched Margaret perform, the hugs, the laughter, the "isn't this wonderful," and thought about how many years she'd spent watching this woman perform. At 3:30, Margaret clinked a glass with a spoon. "All right, everyone. Last few gifts. Danny, why don't you open the one from Clara? She made it herself, you know. Spent weeks on it." A murmur of appreciation. Danny looked up, her eyes finding Clara across the room. Something passed between them. Fear, maybe, or apology. Clara gave her a small, steady smile. "Bring it here, Margaret said. Clara. She walked to the gift table, picked up the pink-wrapped book, and carried it to Danny. She handed it. Their fingers broke. Danny's were cold. "Thank you," Danny said. Her voice was thin. "Open it," Clara said. She stepped back beside Priya and folded hers. Danny tore the tissue. The leather cover came in. Pink embroidery. "For the bee. With love. Aunt." "Aw." Danny opened. The first page was the photo from Marcus's hand on her knee, both of them. Danny smiled. She turned. The hotel room photo. The lamp, the yellow light. Her hand started to shake. The room. The clink of glass. Someone's fork hovered it. Danny turned a page. The receipt timeline, dates, locations, amounts, cross-referenced with Marcus's claimed trips. Her breath faster. Another page. The emails. Margaret's words in white. We need a plan. Marry Todd before she starts showing. Kara distracted. Danny made a sound, half-gasp sob. It fell open on her lap. Up. Todd leaned forward, picked up the book. He read. His face went through every stage of understanding in 10 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, dawning horror. What is this? This was quiet. Too quiet. What is this? No one answered. Stepped forward. Todd, honey, this is understanding. Clara, what have you done? Clara stepped forward. The room for her like water. Raised her voice. 7 months, she said. I found messages on my husband's iPad. Between him and my sister. They'd been having 5 months. While I was in Rotten after I came home. My parents found out 10 months ago. They didn't call me. They called Marcus. They made a plan. They rushed Danny into marrying Todd so no one would question the pregnancy. They made me sit at Sunday dinner and pretend everything was fine. They told me I was destroying the right to talk about it. He looked at Todd. I'm sorry. You deserved better than to be a solution's problem. Staring at Danny. Is it true? His voice cracked. The baby, is it mine? Danny couldn't. She was crying, hands over her mouth, shaking, nodding at the same time. Is it mine, Danny? I don't. Her voice broke. Oh. The room erupted. Someone screamed. Margaret was saying Clara's name over and over, like a prayer and a curse. Robert's chair, face in his hands. Todd stepped back and walked out the back door. The screen door opened. Clara watched him, then turned to Priya. Priya took her hand. They walked out the front door, past the staring guests, past Margaret reaching for her, past the pink balloon falling apart. Outside, the sky was blue. Clara got in her car. Priya in the passenger seat. Clara turned the key. Where to? Home, Clara said. First time she meant the apartment. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for the world to rearrange itself. The gossip spread through Ballantine like wildfire. Through the church, the PTA, the grocery store, the country club. Margaret stopped answering her phone. She stopped going to the grocery store, sending Robert instead, and didn't set foot in church for 2 Sundays. People said she looked 10 years older. Danny went into labor 2 weeks early. The doctor said it was stress. She had a girl, 6 pounds 2 ounces, with Marcus's jawline and Margaret's nose. The DNA test came back a week later. Marcus was the father. Todd had already filed for divorce by then. He'd moved into an apartment in Uptown and changed his number. Clara hadn't spoken to him since the shower, but Priya had heard through a friend that he was devastated but relieved. If that makes sense? It made sense. Marcus came back from Atlanta 5 days after the shower. He'd been staying in a hotel, not answering calls. And when he finally showed up at the house on Providence Road, Karen Whitfield was waiting with the divorce papers. He signed without a fight. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he knew he didn't have a leg to stand on. Maybe the reality of being a father to a baby he'd tried to pretend wasn't his had finally landed. The house went on the market. Clara didn't want any of the furniture. She saw her parents. It was a Tuesday and Robert had called her, not Margaret, Robert, and asked if she'd meet him at a diner on South Boulevard. She went. Margaret wasn't there. Just Robert, in a booth by the drinking coffee that had gone. I thought we were protecting him, said. He looked at his, the way he always did when there was something hard. Your mother and I. If we held it together long enough, it would just. These things usually go away. Dad. Clara's voice was gentle. They don't. They rot. And you let it rot for 10 years. Robert nodded slowly. He took a sip of cold coffee and face. I know, that was it. No grand apology. Breakdown. Just an old man who'd spent his life avoiding conflict. Finally admitting the silence. Clara paid for his left. Him. She didn't call. She walked out into the parking lot, stood in them for a minute, and drove home. Home was the apartment now. The one-bedroom South Park, with the water on the ceiling and the Keurig that made weak coffee. She'd bought a plant, a rug, curtains, and it was starting to feel like hers. Not perfect. Not the house on Providence Road with the grand countertops. On a Friday night, Priya showed up with Thai food wine. They sat on the floor because Clara hadn't bought a table yet, eating pad thai out of styrofoam containers on low. How are you really? Priya said, around about it. The shower. Danny's face opened the book. Todd the back door. Robert's cold coffee. The baby with Marcus's jawline. 7 months of silence, Sunday dinners. Practicing she wasn't. I thought I'd feel like I won, Clara said. She looked out the window at a woman walking a streetlight. I thought there'd been of triumph. I just feel light. Like I've been carrying something heavy for so long I forgot what it down. Priya nodded. It's better than win. Yeah, Clara smiled. It is. Phone buzzed on the floor. She picked it up. An email from Karen Whitfield was final. The settlement was signed. It was free. Clara picked up her wine. She raised the glass. She said. It clinked her glass again, to lightness. Outside the flickered and steadied. Somewhere a dog barked. The apartment was small. The coffee was weak. The ceiling had a water stain. But Clara Bennett, longer hazed, was home.